Here's one I wanted to answer. LexLuthorJr. says, I'm 43 years old and have finally reached the point where I have the time, money, and space to dive into making. I know that you're never too old to start something new, but I get discouraged when I learn that other makers have been honing their crafts since they were teenagers. Any advice for getting over the hesitation to learn a new skill? Because you know it could be years before you feel like you know what you're doing. Huge secret. No matter how good you get at a skill, you don't ever really think that you know what you're doing. You do know what you're doing, right? You do end up learning that you know what you're doing. But the more you know what you're doing, the more you can see how much you don't know what the hell you're doing. Seriously. The knowing more means knowing more about what you still don't know. Really, I really believe that. And your question, I read this last night, and I started thinking about it. Your question, it led me to an idea about advice, and I want to try this out. So my advice is, if you want to make something and you're wondering if it'll take you along, and you're worried, you are held back, Lex Luthor Jr., by the fear that you'll make something and it won't be good, and the delta between you and being good enough to make the thing you want feels too great. I really get you on that. I feel you on that hesitation. And so here's the thing I want to suggest. And I feel like I should also try this, which is, if you're going to take on a new skill, any new skill, I would think about making an object, and then I would commit to making that object 3 times in a row. And here's the reason I think that that's actually an interesting practice, because it does not matter at all how bad you are at making something. If you make it using a process and then you immediately make a second one, I guarantee you the second one's going to be better. The second one is going to be much better than the first one. That's just, it might only be incrementally better. It might only be, it felt better to do it, but it is going to be better. And if you then commit to doing it a 3rd time, well, now you've plotted a curve on a graph. And you get to see just where you might be able to go with this. And more than that, I am positive that the building of it that 3rd time is going to be itself energy generating because of the improvement from step 1. I've been wanting to do stained glass here for a while, and it's specifically because Kate Sabaker and the amazing Simone Nietsch have both sung its praises and beauty to me. And I actually bought a bunch of stained glass equipment and tools, and they're in storage right now because I just haven't wrapped my head around spending a week doing that. But I think that that's actually what I'm going to do. I think that when I break out the stained glass, I think the video I will do will be to make the same thing 3 separate times and clock the improvement. I really feel like that could be quite useful. If you end up trying it, I would love to know about it. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious.
Do you start from scratch each time?
Yeah, I would start from scratch each time.
You won't build in.
What's that?
You wouldn't build in efficiencies.
No. Norm is asking if I would start from scratch each time or if I'd build in efficiencies. I really think that it's like, it would be like going back to the root, like starting from the drawing, making the separations, cutting the glass, edging it, and all the stuff. I understand the process of stained glass. I've just never actually done it. But I think that's so much of this iteration is, so much of this process of learning is failure and iteration in equal measure. Do it multiple times. That means you're going to be screwing it up. You're going to feel cocky. Life is going to come up and smack you across the chops. Jon Frier asks, and this is germane to this, it feels like, do you prefer quick and rough making or slow and detailed? Oh, that is all totally mood-based, man. I love nothing more than knocking stuff out. And I really like deadlines. So this morning, I got some 3D printers recently. I've been running them 24/7, and on my Anycubic and my my Anycubic Cobra Max, I have this dry box for 3 kilogram spools of filament, and I had the 3 kilogram spools sitting on a center spindle, and that's actually a little too much friction for the machine occasionally. And every now and then it would stop and be like, I'm having too much trouble pulling on this. And I realized that that's why all hot boxes have rollers at the bottom, because that's much less friction than overcoming the friction of the spindle. And I was going to shoot it as a one-day build. And then I was like here, and I had like I received an IKEA delivery, and I did some cleaning up, and I had like an hour, and I was like, you know what? I'm just, you know what? I'm just going to make this. And I did. That was quick and dirty. 2 pieces of plastic, 4 pieces of Teflon, 2 aluminum tubes, and a bunch of skateboard bearings. And I made those rollers. So I love the quick and dirty, like, and we just spent so much time on this big job for a video game client. And I got to spend a lot of time in high detail work. And that was also crazy, crazy fun. Michael Schnell says, and again, this just is right on the heels of what I've been talking about. You've often said weathering is one of your favorite parts. Do you ever need to make something with no weathering, and does that frustrate you? No, it doesn't. It doesn't frustrate me to do something with no weathering, although it would be rare. But I'm not always. I mean, you know, when I made the vitrines, the encasements for the boys' surface for Cliff Stoll, that doesn't have any weathering on it. That's just the object in and of itself. DecanFrost says, "I just want to thank you." That's a Blade reference. I just want to thank you, they say, and the Mythbusters team for getting me through some of the worst times of my life. My question is a Star Wars prequels question. Do you think the majority of the backlash on the prequels was because people expected more of a dystopian Star Wars and got disappointed? I must admit that I was likewise too hard on them and have since grown to love them very deeply. I appreciate the resuscitation of the reputation of the prequels. I still have huge issues with them dramatically, and I am super proud of the work I got to do on them professionally. And I love all of the humans that I know and met and worked with on working on them. And I think that when I say that I have issues with them narratively, I think you're right. I think the prequels are absolutely gorgeous. I think that the first one, that's Attack of the Clones, right? Phantom Menace. Wow. I think the first one, Phantom Menace, is almost too busy. It feels like, I have made this analogy before. I'm going to make it again right now. If you are of a certain age, in your mid to late 40s, then you remember when computers started doing graphic design instead of people. And I don't mean that people weren't doing it. I just mean when computers became able to do easy font choice and graphic design. Before computers, you literally had to go to a graphic design shop and pay someone to like make your font in the text that you wanted. You had to give them kerning and you had to correct it. And it was a whole process. And then all of a sudden, computers come online in the mid 80s, the late 80s, and graphic design goes through this terrible phase where every font is available to the designer and they use all of them. And there are early issues of Wired that are crimes against graphic design. And if you remember Mondo 2000, oh my God, things like red text in halftone against black background, like the most unreadable stuff. But it was the growing pains is what it was. It was the growing pains of the, now I remember where I was going with this. It's the growing pains of the medium. So people have too much possibility, or they're given so much possibility at the advent of computers and graphic design that they use all of that possibility and it becomes this stew. And I feel like the tools that George found that he had in the prequels were so gave him so much flexibility. And we're so, like, I think before the first prequel, like, your average special effects film might have somewhere between like 50 and 300 effect shots in it. I mean, like, Jurassic Park has something like 130, something really small, weirdly small amounts. And then episode 1 comes out, and it's like every single scene had some digital manipulation. And so it was like 2,300 digital shots. And so when I look at Phantom Menace now, it seems almost like too much cacophony. And when I look at episode 2, that's Attack of the Clones. When I look at episode 2, I see Ralph McQuarrie paintings one after the other. I think episode 2 is absolutely beautiful visually. I still have issues with it narratively. That's fine. It is visually gorgeous. And if you just put it on with sound off, that is a stunningly beautiful film. But also part of the backlash, man, is the first 3 Star Wars films are so amazing. The first 2 of them even more so. The first Star Wars is so hungry, it's so impossible. Watching Light and Magic about how they made it seems even more impossible. And then Empire has such a swagger and a sense of humor. I'm a firm believer that every absurd movie needs someone in that movie making fun of the movie. And Han Solo is that character in the Star Wars movies. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.